Hi, today I'm going to be covering the concept of helper columns or helper index as I like to call it. This is a skill set that will help elevate and upgrade how you analyze data and discover new ways to set best practices to solve your problems. Now, the concept of helper index is probably not new to you. It is simply the concept of creating an extra column or row of data that is meant to help you analyze data more efficiently. Now, where the learning curve is that there are infinite ways to set up these helper columns from a very static and not so efficient way to a flexible and a very advanced way. Today, I want to really get you guys exposed to the concept of creating these helper index and get insight to different skill sets and techniques that you can use to set up these helper index more efficiently to analyze data. To do this, we're going to go over 3 sets of problems. I'm going to have this available on my website to download for you guys to practice. And I highly recommend you to do so because the best way to learn new Excel skill sets is by actually tackling and trying these problems. So let's quickly go over different scenarios of where these helper index can become useful and go over how we can create these efficiently. The very first question requires us to calculate the total compensation for the departments listed below, which is the operations and the finance department. However, when we look at the data set that we're expected to use, we can see that the department and the location are fused into one cell. So in order to do this, I'm going to create an extra column of data that is going to contain this department information. Now, there are 2 ways to do this. The first way is to type out the department first. So I'm going to type out operations. And then right under it, I'm going to press Control E, which will then autofill all the departments listed here. Now, I don't recommend this approach because relying on autofill reduces the quality of the data. So I'm going to show you how to create this data manually with a formula. So I'm going to use the left formula. And I'm going to search the text of the department and location. And I'm going to search for the character of the underscore within the department location. And then you'll notice it returns all the characters up to the underscore. Now, I don't want the underscore within this column here, so I'm actually going to subtract 1 so I can reduce 1 character. And then just to be safe, I'm going to layer on a trim function so that it removes any extra spaces because it impacts how Excel recognizes these data. So now that I have a helper column here, which I'm going to call helper index department, I can now use this column to consolidate the base compensation information. So I'm going to use the SUMIFs where I sum the base compensation based on our new set of column for the operations and the finance department. As we can see, the answer is listed over here. Now, this is a very basic case of where we need to create a helper column. However, we'll now go into a second scenario, which will go over a more complex use of these helper index. So in scenario number 2, we are required to calculate the total compensation for the manager and senior position. So if we take a look at the seniority column, we can see that the manager is the code number 5 and the senior position is the code number 4. So in order to normally do this, you have 2 ways. First, you can SUMIFs the compensation where the seniority equals manager, and you can add this. So let's copy this function, and you can add this with the position of senior. So this will get you the answer that you want. However, if the question asks for manager, senior, junior, intermediate, you have to keep expanding this formula. So let's think of a way how to do this more efficiently and in a more streamlined approach. The way I'm going to do this is right above, I'm going to create a section called relevant positions. And right under, I'm going to type manager, and then I'm going to type senior. And now let's say we want to create a helper column and we're going to call this relevant seniority. And we're going to set up if count ifs the relevant positions for our seniority equals 1, then I want it to return relevant, otherwise empty. And now you'll see in this helper column that we've just created, we have the text relevant for all the senior and the manager positions. So then we can just set up a sum ifs for the base compensation where the seniority are all relevant. And we'll get the same answer that we just got. And this is a very flexible approach. So let's say instead of up to row 8, we'll update this up to row 9. And then we'll highlight this black. So then every time we need to add an additional seniority into this analysis. So let's say in addition to the manager and the senior position, we also want to assess the junior. We can add a row here, add junior, and then you'll see that the helper column automatically factors in this junior position as well. So let's delete this again. And here you'll notice that the junior got removed and the calculation automatically updated. And now let's go over one more example that is going to be the most complex. And in this scenario, we want to calculate the daily interest rate generated on the accounts that are TFSA, FHSA, which is Canadian, and the RSP, again, which is Canadian. And let's say that we only want to calculate the relevant interest rate for the period between June 15th, 2023 to June 30th, 2023. So we essentially have to calculate interest for the 3 specific account types up above using an annual interest rate of 5.25% only for the periods between June 15th, 2023 to June 30th, 2023. And if you were to do this normally without these helper columns, your formula will be very long. And by using helper columns, let's see how we can do this efficiently. And we're just going to add one more helping data set here, just like we did with the scenario number 2, where relevant account type, we're going to register TFSA, FHSA, and RSP. So in our formula, we're going to type if and count ifs between these account types and the account type listed here equals 1. And that is going to be our first criteria. So if the account falls between TFSA, FHSA, and RSP, it will return true. The second criteria is that the date is greater than or equal to the date of June 15th. And the third criteria is that the date is less than or equal to the date of June 30th, 2023. And if all of these are met, then we want to return the value of relevant, otherwise empty. And again, I have my dates fixed here, but it is much more efficient to have it static. So let's actually do that. So date, and let's state June 15th, 2023 and June 30th, 2023. And instead of using this date function here, we can reference our start date over here and then reference our end date over here, like this. So then you'll notice all the accounts that are either TFSA, FHSA, and RSP, and all the balances that are between June 15th and the 30th have the value of relevant. So then we can determine this helper index as relevant status, and then interest calculation as our second helper index. So in our second helper index, what we're going to do is if the relevant status equals relevant, then I want to calculate the ending balance times the interest rate of 5.25% divided by 365, because that will return the daily interest rate. Otherwise, return empty. And let's just convert this into a number. And we can see that all the accounts that meet the criteria stated above, we will then calculate the interest rate for them. and all the ones that don't fall into the dates, the relevant account types, it will calculate the interest, and instead of having to generate a very long formula that can lead to errors and difficult to audit, all we have to do is just sum this interest calculation column over here. And just to validate, we can filter and we can check which ones are relevant, which are all the TFSA accounts between the dates we specified, RSP, and we don't have any FHSAs. And if we check the account types, we don't have FHSA on this list. So we know that this formula is working properly. And then going forward, if you ever wanted to update the dates, so let's say June 1st, 2023, it will then update the calculation for total interest automatically. Again, helper columns are here to help you stay organized and take a more visible approach to solving these problems. This is a very valuable skill set, and I highly recommend that you get used to setting up these helper index to solve problems and analyze data. Again, this file will be on my website to download, and if you have any questions, feel free to message me. I'm going to be uploading more educational content, so follow for more.